So today is May 29th, 2021. My name is Ann Shi, and
I'm Christine Wu.
We are with the Houston Asian American Archive, and we're interviewing Rachel Gonzalez in her studio at the Sawyer Yard Studios Place in downtown Houston. Thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us today and taking out time in your Memorial Weekend.
Yay. Thank you for having me. And thank you to Earth for not raining on us right now. It's been nonstop.
It's a blessed day, yes. And to start, can you tell us when and where were you born?
Okay, I was born in a small town in Massachusetts called Newburyport. There's a lot of water around there, and that was in 1986. I'm a fire tiger, and that was May 12. And my mom was walking around a lake by a castle when her water broke. So it's weird. I was born in a watery area, even though it was in the States, and my family's from the Philippines. So my dad was from Pampanga, and they're known for really good food, because every place prepares the same dishes differently, but they're known for really strong flavors. And then my mom was from Mindanao in Davao City, which is known for durian, the smelly fruit, and beach life. So maybe that's where I get my water connection and love for food. And I was also raised by a Greek godmother who took care of me when I was little. I called her Nina because godmother in Tagalog means ninang, but I can't make that sound, so I called her Nina. And she's still a huge part of my life. It took a lot of people to raise me because my parents were just working, trying to make things happen, and so yeah, that's technically where I was born. But I have lived here in Houston and a suburb of Houston for most of my life.
Can you describe the town that you grew up in? What was the demographic like?
It's weird though, I went to visit a few years ago, and the house that my Greek godmother raised me in was on for sale, so I actually went back pretending to buy it, and I was like, this is where I sharpened my pencil in the basement, and a lot of the things were the same. There aren't that many Asians at all. When I was born, I was the only baby with dark hair and rosy red, darker skin, and it was just, my mom was like, that's mine. Although her friends still lived there, yeah, mostly still the same, kind of an old town, colonial town. But I did spend a lot of summers at the beach in Salisbury Beach, and it was a very kind of simple, carefree vibe, not really glamorous at all, just cheap pizza and arcade games and things like that. My parents moved from the basement of a bakery to an apartment here and there. They kind of moved around a lot until they finally settled in Houston to start a business together, which I think Houston is definitely more diverse, more flavors, more cultures here. But it's crazy because sometimes they'll be like, where are you from? Where were you born? And I say Massachusetts. Oh, that's why you're so liberal and stuff like that. I don't know. But when I go there, it's not really that diverse. I don't know what they mean by that. Maybe they're thinking of a political party kind of a thing. I don't know. Although the Salem witch trials happened there, so there's this element of repressed femininity, of connection to nature and things. If you talk to animals, you were
Feminology.
hung or drowned, and if you didn't drown, you were a witch and would be like punished anyway. There's this kind of like eerie story around there. Like when they do Halloween, they really like get into it. And it's weird, like when you think of Massachusetts, it's kind of a weird sounding state. And I'm like, this sounds like a Native American name that's been like butchered by someone trying to pronounce it like not completely well.
Do you know the real etymology of it? Or?
No, but doesn't it sound like a weird name? It's a mouthful of syllables. So I think there's a part of me when I hear about like Native Americans being not heard or a lot of, I don't know, there's this kind of connection about that. It's like, but when you think about it, it's all their land anyway, but I don't know. When you think about like where you came from and all this stuff, it always comes back to like the earth and like the collective, and I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Okay, so Massachusetts. I only spent like 5 years of my life there. My sister was still in the Philippines, so I actually grew up around a lot of adults, and I thought I was, in my world, I thought I was an only child. My Greek godmother ended up like loved to take care of me. She took care of me when I was like 2 weeks old, and ended up adopting 2 boys. One was from El Salvador, another one was half Korean, half white, and I hung out with them a lot. And I knew what adopted meant, so I didn't understand the concept of having the same mom, which is another story because my father had children with more women. So like I grew up with a half brother from another mother and a half sister from another mother. My mom like petitioned or like had them stay with us. So when I met my actual sister from my mom, I asked her who her mom was, and she pointed to mine, and I said, no, that's my mom. What's happening? But you don't really think about it because you go to school and everyone has their own mom. And the brothers that I played with, they were adopted, so I knew what adopted meant. Like, you know, I want more than one child. It was weird, but it kind of influenced why I'm more comfortable with being around different types of people that have lived through different experiences. I think
It's a very different mode of
I
kinship.
kind of grew up in like a not conventional family unit, or I guess where it's like my immediate sister, my immediate.
That's very interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't done any of the interviews, but it seems to me that a lot of like Asian American community is particularized on like notions of kinship, and that's very interesting. That you have different notions of kinship, right?
Yeah.
Was there a point that you realized that you're Asian? That you could be slightly different from the people around you? Like what was that earliest point that you were?
That I felt different from other people. I always felt different. It wasn't because like, oh, I'm Asian and you're not Asian. It was like, I never liked playing. I would fake a nosebleed at recess. Like I just hated like the concept of like forced play with this like weird games that are. I'm just not like a sports person. I don't know why. I had anxiety around that. And I just wanted to read and like write and read and do like get lost in my own world. I also wore boys' clothing at the time because I think my mom subconsciously wanted a boy but didn't really. And when I look at these photos of like me in like a sailor outfit, like a boy, like blue, white. I know the concept of like gendered clothing is stupid, but like it was intentional. Like she said, the girl's clothing looks so uncomfortable, so she was like and then my Greek godmother was like, why did you wear a lot of brown? It was a lot of brown and black. So like I even had my own different sense of style when I was little, and it's weird. When you're younger, you don't really have this concept of like the other yet. You're just kind of like in your world doing you, and I think that's always been a part of me. But I don't know if the question's more like trying to get at if I ever felt like discriminated or something like that. I would say I don't think I was like really made fun of, but I did have this sense of like not really belonging, but being okay with that in a weird way, because I kind of knew that, I don't know, maybe I was just comfortable in my own skin and like how I am. But yeah, there is this human sense of like wanting to connect with people and be like them. Or even if we think about Filipino values in terms of what is considered cool or attractive, I would notice that they would say, oh, you look very mestiza, like your skin's so fair, you're like, that's a sign of beauty. So I don't like being compared in that way. Like, there's nothing wrong. There's beauty in skin that's the same color as the earth. There's beauty in different kind of things. Like, but I did notice that. And then sometimes, because knowing that my name is Gonzalez, which is from Spanish colonization, they'll be like, oh, are you Mexican, or were you divorced but you kept your ex-husband's last name, kind of thing. But I don't think that's like, I'm not offended when people say those things, but it's something that like comes up a lot, I guess. If you think about Filipino culture though, it is now like a real mix of a lot of things. I probably have some Chinese blood, some Spanish blood. I actually don't look like most Filipinos, even when I went there. They were like, are you from Korea or China or what? Or if I go shopping, depending on which Asian grocery store, they'll either be like, "shishie" or "kamsahamnida," and I just like throw it back at them, like, that's cool. I don't really get offended, but maybe that gives me the ability to kind of shapeshift or blend in like different cultures, I guess.
It's a very cosmopolitan way of belonging.
Yeah, I think. I did go to a school though where it was super competitive, but I didn't like play into that game, but there were a lot of Asians at my school, so I didn't experience being around people that didn't look like me, I guess. But I noticed when I traveled to like Denver, Colorado, or some places that seem to project this image of la-di-da liberalism, but I'm like, where are the black people? Where are the Asian people? What planet am I on? I find that's weird.
It's the Northwest, I
Is it weird?
It's like Northwest liberalism, no offense. It's very interesting because it's
so,
very liberal, like everyone thinks it's so liberal, but there's no people of color.
It's not.
There's no people of color.
There's a reason why they think that way. It's weird.
So they have nobody to challenge it.
Yeah. If I ever was oppressed, I don't know if I can't really think about a specific instance where I'm like, no, F you. I don't know. But yeah, there is something that comes with being Filipina and having like a Spanish last name, and but because I just already grew up with so many different people in my life, that was like normal to me.
Yeah.
Being different is cool. Like, we're all different. We all have different gifts. That's how I kind of see humanity.
Yeah. I'm actually really interested in like modes of kinship. Cause like, yeah, I don't know. It's like a very, whenever we think about like Asian culture, it's always like, oh, family this, family that, like just a lot of emphasis on like biological family. I don't know how much I'm allowed to interject anyway, but
and there's a sense of honor, right?
Yeah.
This other layer of like honor for our family, honor for our
Tribe.
Yeah. Whereas in more Western culture, it's like, do your own thing when you're 18.
Yeah.
Forget your family. Put them in a nursing home. And I'm like, how can you do do that, no. Yeah, like even after my father died, I felt like I had dreams of like, oh, let me go to Copenhagen and live my like adventurous life. I'm like, there's no way like I could leave my mom like that. Like I just felt like, and it wasn't out of obligation. It's just like in me, like family is important, and my relationship with my mom actually evolved over time because I actually had like kind of abandonment issues when she wasn't around working, but that's just because she was doing the best that she could. But as a child, you don't realize those things. You're like, oh, maybe like, why is she not around? Like, what did I do wrong, or what can I do better? Kinship, I would say, having nurturing people around you. Having people that can hold space for you in whatever you're going through is important, I think. Filipinos, I will say, have this kind of, is it a camaraderie? We have a word that's called kapwa, kind of like seeing yourself in the other. Community, it's very like rooted in kinship, and I noticed that if I am going to the art museum and people that are guarding, they look Filipino. I was like, are you Filipino? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, tita. Like we always, it's like once you know you're Filipino, it's like we use language that's like, you're my auntie now, you're my uncle now, and it's just kind of like. That is a kind of a kinship, or even if it's like something dumb like an artist that is singing to win a competition and they're Filipino, like all Filipinos will like rally up and like vote for this person to like win that contest. Or like, you know, with Manny Pacquiao too, there's a lot of like, I'm not into boxing, but like he is awesome. There's this kind of like, we see ourselves like family even if we're not related.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in some cultures they're a bit more competitive in some way, like, or they want to show that they're better than this person. But I think as a collective, there's this kind of sense of already like we're family now. I don't know where that comes from though. Like, actually, when I became part of Philippine X Artist of Houston, I didn't realize that this kind of community was kind of missing from my life in a way, because we already have language to express things that we can't with other people. I don't know why. There's like less translation involved with that, and I think that's kind of a cool thing too, combined with we're all creative and finding ways to express ourselves as well. So yeah, I mean, I find community in people that are Filipino, not Filipino, and my blood. I don't know if that's like an ENFP thing. Yeah, I think having supportive, nurturing people in your life is important no matter what. Because also, anything I've ever done in life hasn't been without the support or encouragement of someone else in my life, I guess. So, yeah, we're all connected.
Can you talk a little bit about the food that you had, like in your own family and with your Greek godparents?
So I used to be really picky with eating, because I was with my Greek godmother a lot. So they couldn't make me eat like the more traditional dishes. I would only eat, they say toi toi and rice, which is soy sauce and rice with like a tiny bit of butter. Like I like lived off of that. But then at my godmother's house, I would eat like pasta, Greek, the spinach, feta, spanakopita thing.
Those are so good.
I even had Thanksgiving with them maybe 10 or so years ago, and they stuffed the turkey with the grape leaf spices. And I would eat like oatmeal and play this game of like tic-tac-toe where you like squeeze the strawberry flavor. I was really obsessed with like tic-tac-toe, and then that evolved into this like weird obsession with chess and like something about like spatially trying to arrange things.
It's a very artistic thing to do, no?
Yeah. And I also majored in architecture, which is kind of like related to this kind of grid thing and what can I do within the grid. But I really love bizcocho. My dad would make that with coffee. It's when you really toast the bread so it's crunchy and almost burnt with lots of butter and sugar, and you just dip it in coffee. And I think he acclimated my taste buds to coffee at maybe too young of an age. That's something that I'm trying to like wean off. It's like too much caffeine, and I'm like, 4 a.m. What's happening? But now I'm like obsessed with kare, which is a peanut butter stew, and I love what is it? My mom's chicken curry, super yummy. I'm really spoiled by my mom. She like makes a lot of good food, and I also like eating fish with my hands and dipping it in. They call it suka bawang. It's garlic in vinegar. And sometimes we do it like really big with the boodle. We call it a boodle fry. Like in the military style eating, it's like all banana leaves, and all your meat is in the middle, and it's mostly seafoods and stuff. And then your rice is on your banana leaf, and you just like go at it. There's this kind of like shameless indulgence with food, and I feel like food is the way that we bond. And if you want to disrespect a family, don't eat their food. If you care, eat the food, even if you don't want to. So yeah, and then my grandma would make really good kare also. And I actually learned some of my Tagalog from her because she also helped raise me for a little bit. And her name is Karing, which is like, we would make, because it's like kare and karing, it was like her signature dish. So that peanut butter stew is like, I think my favorite. And you add like a shrimp paste to it to kind of, there's this kind of like, okay, this is the meal, but if you add this and dip it with this, it's like takes it to the next level, right? Like whether it's a garlic vinegar or a shrimp paste thing to add on. And I think it has to do with being in such like a tropical climate that vinegar and these kind of things help keep the food lasting longer. And I think being accustomed to that palate, I really love strong flavors. So like even like Szechuan cooking, I'm like, I want the one with like more peppers, like more. So I think I've developed like a palate for that. But I haven't had balut, which is like a chick that hasn't really developed yet in the egg.
I've heard of that before.
That's like my line, because I think I'm too like empathetic that I'm like, this is like
it freaks me out a little bit, not gonna lie.
Like my mind can't like go there to eat it or try it. But my mom loved eating that when she was like with my dad and he was like courting her. They would eat balut, watching the sunset and stuff. It's like a delicacy there. I still love going to H Mart and just getting my snacks. Like, I feel like Asian snacks is like, you know, I want my dried squid, my dried, you know, it's like, it's almost like the stinkier the better. So, flavors, yes, are good. But yeah, because my Greek godmother was half Italian, I am all about like making the pasta really al dente. Like I'll throw it on the wall and wait for it to stick before it's like right. Because if you overdo it, it's too soggy. And I think food's another art, right? It's like, and it can be very healing too. Like what you eat, food is your medicine.
I mean, they always say food is an art and baking is a science. So there's
Baking is a science. Macarons, never. I cannot do it. I just pay for them. Like it has to be the humidity and all this stuff.
I've tried before too, and just
It's
didn't.
really hard. What is it? Food is a what?
Food is an art and
is
baking
an art.
is a science.
Baking is a science. Yeah, measuring and all those things. Which is kind of what I'm doing with oil painting, because it's like, yeah, it's a lot of like knowing the medium and playing with. It's more technical way of process, I think. They also say like if you crave sweet things, it's kind of like this motherly connection that you're craving, or like mommy issues, and if you like salty things, you're craving more of that like protective father energy. I've heard that from some like healers. And I will say I have a big sweet tooth. And maybe that's because my mom was working a lot when I was little. So yeah, right now we're going through like a big ube craze, like ube cake, ube jam, ube coffee drinks. I'm noticing a lot of that, even in like non-Filipino stores, or ube macarons.
I've only ever really seen like the ube trend in New York and LA though. I feel like elsewhere it's kind of harder to find, you know?
I think it's happening now because maybe I'm part of this Filipino group
Fair.
and they're always having a
Fair.
pop-up and it's like ube everything. Ube jam, ube cookie.
I think part of it is aesthetic, no? Like the purple. It's very...
It is
Calls
pretty.
people.
It is, yeah. That's a thing. And pandan is like a green, a very vibrant green color that's also kind of an earthier tea taste. I don't know, the pandan leaves. I definitely love coconut. I came from the desert and my friend and I were like, why is coconut water magic? It like really is more satisfying than regular water. And it's like, cause we're island girls, like, this is where we came from. But yeah, it has like more electrolytes. It's almost like creamier and not too sweet. It's funny, I noticed like in a lot of Asian tasting thing, like if you're eating a dessert and like, oh, it's so good, not too sweet, like that's a thing. Or too sweet, it's bad. Yeah.
Can you also talk about how, like, as you were talking about, it's a human common bond, and like the constellation, which I personally know that you're very well researched and fascinated about. Can you talk about how that kind of informs you as a person and your artistic practices?
What's the word constellation?
Yeah, constellation, like the signs and the stars.
Oh, astrology.
Oh, constellations.
Yeah.
Or no, I was like, constellation, like grieving and healing through it? Or constellations?
Yeah,
Oh, like
constellation.
the celestial bodies.
Yes. And then
Oh, okay, yeah. So, we're on planet Earth. It's so weird that I have to like remind myself this. Let's see, you want to know like how it started in my life and my connection with that. Okay, so I don't know if you saw this Disney, is it Disney American Tale? It's about this mouse, and he's portrayed as like this Jewish mouse escaping, and he's like a refugee coming to America. And his name, Fievel Mouskowitz. I watched this thing, and then like the theme song of that movie is called Somewhere Out There, and one of the lyrics is there's something about being under the same moon and the same sky. So like even though he's being separated by his mouse family, there's still that bond. So I don't know why maybe I had separation anxiety when my Filipino family moved here to Houston, and I had to say bye to my Greek Italian godmother. And I would tell myself, like, I would look at the moon and be like, well, we're still able to like see this same moon at the same moment, even though we're like miles apart. And I found that was very comforting to me. And so I think that moon and the stars have always been this kind of constant in times of uncertainty, because that's just life, right? Things are changing, but the moon is there. And then in terms of spirituality, I never really connected with. So, with Spanish influence on Filipino culture, it's very rooted in Roman Catholicism, and I actually didn't really think about Jesus or what he did because it was all about Mother Mary. And we even had a grotto in my mom's backyard of Mary, and like we had like roses to her and like water flowing around her. And I kind of thought of Mary as this like motherly, like a mother moon almost. And I think my spirituality actually deepened with my connection with the moon, because if you think about the concept of God and not being able to see what God is, you cannot see the moon at some times, but you know that the moon is always there. And even in the darkest time, it's like the moon is still there, like the presence of the moon is still there, and even when it's full, the moon shines light in times of dark at night. And it's this concept of like, if you think about the moon, it's the sun's light shining on this like solid piece of rock, reflecting back to us on earth. So I kind of found Mother Mary to be this kind of conduit messenger. Like we prayed to Mary, Mary asks God or Jesus or whoever, and someone listens. It was this always kind of conduit of getting a message out there and there. So I find like the indirect light of the moon was fascinating to me, as opposed to this like oppressive sun that just like won't even, it's even hard to look at the sun, you know, it's not recommended. I know we have a solar eclipse coming up on a new moon. But yeah, the moon has always been this kind of constant, unconditionally, always there, motherly presence in my life. And knowing that it does control the tides and like the moods in my body and the water, this water-moon connection. I also, I don't know why, but like when it comes to social justice, you know, I don't really identify with one party or another, but I see things from the sense of a collective humanity on this planet. And when resources are, or when resources or people are getting exploited, like I don't know why I feel it at like a very visceral level. So there was this like protest against this pipeline running through a reservoir, and I went to Energy Transfer Partners downtown, not really to protest like rah rah rah, but like I put candles around this like one corner, and I had like, I was like, and someone interviewed me and I was like, I'm actually not protesting, I'm holding space for Mother Earth because she's not being heard, and this company is like building this thing illegally without permit. It was just like, I got into this like weird like thing, and I think, oh yeah, I met a woman that connected with me, and she turned out to be like a feng shui organizer, I guess. And then she read my like my name, my date, my birth, and said that I'm a life path 5, which means I'm very dynamic, I embrace change. And alchemy means like taking esoteric knowledge and translating it back to earth. I was like, no wonder why I'm like so drawn to like the elements, like whooshing elements of the Chinese like cycle of metal to water to earth to lung to fire. And like I feel that viscerally, like, okay, if you think about water, that's the we're made up of water, right? And then water nourishes metal, that's like the iron in our blood. And then metal turns into metal nourishes water. I mean, it's just a whole cycle. Like wood and air is communication, so I think of that as lungs. And then that fuels fire, which is your heart, your desire, which turns to ash and back to earth, which is the body as a container. Like earth being this element that holds all the other elements. So I think in terms of like the zodiac, it's really just cycles of these elements in seasons. We have summer, fall, spring, winter, and some of these things are more mutable, more fixed, and more cardinal, as in starting a season. So it just kind of like expanded into like more knowledge. It's not like I read all these books about the elements. It's like someone comes into my life and then I make a connection with that, and then it informs my understanding of seasons, elements, the body, how we transition from one phase to another. So like right now we're in May, which is all about spring and fixed growth, like roses. And, you don't have to try to grow things. Like it'll just, we're getting tons of rain, heaps of rain right now. And that's like a fixed earth sign. That's what we're in. We're moving into Gemini season. So that's going into summer. It's a mutable air sign. And it's just like, I don't know why I'm fascinated with this, but when I met that protester, I got really deep into numerology, and but yeah, it started with the moon. That's where it started, and apparently when my mom's water broke, it was a new moon in Cancer on the 5th day after a new moon. So like I have a very strong 5 energy, born in the 5th month, and my mom named me May. My middle name's May. And it's also, that's where the moon is at home, in Cancer. So it's a very intuitive placement. And it's weird, like I will just say certain things to people, like I get a download of something and they wonder about it and they look it up and like, oh, you're right. And I'm like, I'm not even trying to, though. I'm not like trying to send a thought beam out. It's weird. I don't know.
I've been really thinking about like cyclical time and the seasons.
Yes.
Because there's some activists who talk about cyclical time as sort of a way to sort of resist colonization through the linearization of time and narratives.
We have to decolonize the calendar.
Yes.
If you think about Julius and Augustus, that's why the months are off. Why is December the 12th when Des is the 10th?
But they also got to name it, so that's
and they named it, and we have 13 moons. In Tagalog, buwan, moon means month.
Yes.
So if we decolonize the calendar to be lunar, it would make more sense.
It would make more sense.
It's just a lot of unlearning. And I think that's why it does make sense to me. It's like, this is why I go through periods where I feel like I need to rest. Like we're in a waning moon period. Let's not try to like force ourselves.
Do you think it relates to that piece maybe? I mean, like, because the Gregorian calendar is very sun-based and very like masculine.
It is.
In comparison to the moon.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that piece.
Yeah.
And the inspiration.
Because it's like phases. That's a full moon and then we're waning. Yeah. And I think the Asian concept of time is different than Western concept of time. If you think about seasons and cycles, even the zodiac in Chinese element, it's by year, an element of yin and yang. Whereas Western astrology is based on physical space in relationship to Earth and where these planets are. So it's like, it's more rooted in like physical realm, where I think the Asian sense of cyclical time is more spiritual and rooted in cycles. You notice that like a lot of more elderly Asian with more wisdom, they are like, they see time as a cycle and not about being rushed to do anything. They take their time and they know and they trust that this is just human nature, I guess. Where I felt like the Western time is like, oh, you're late, like you're 3 minutes late.
I think that's also a byproduct of neoliberal capitalism.
I know.
But we're not going to go there.
Isn't it? It's capitalistic.
It is.
Because it's like, the concept of time is really, it's just movement of planets around this system. It's going to keep moving. Like sun isn't really setting. It's Earth turning away from that body. But it's like I have to deconstruct language. Like it's not really sunset. You know, if you really think about it, like
we
what's
also
happening.
fetishize a linear narrative, but this is just Christine hot takes, which is not
What?
This is just hot takes from me, so I need it.
Is it?
Is it?
Yeah, and people will ask me, what's next? What are you doing? Blah, 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 after this. And if I'm going through a period where I need rest, it's like I'm doing absolutely nothing intentionally, because that's part of the process. We can't be constantly on full moon mode. And I think periods of rest are necessary, even if you're, fighting capitalism, you need to find time to fill your own cup and, you know, decolonize this idea that you have to like overfunction all the time, and that's not how the seasons are, you know. Avocados aren't always in season, and why are they there all the time? I don't know. Like, even if you think about Ayurveda and like what is bountiful, Earth provides the things that we need to eat at that time, and it's not like, you don't have to over intellectualize it, you know. Some people think I'm crazy, but it's like, no, like, just look at the moon. It's not bright right now. It's a reflection of like just how things happen. And you know, you can even take it into lifetimes, like my existence here. I'm here in this physical realm right now, but I don't know why I kind of have some kind of notion that I existed maybe in a past life. Maybe that's why these things come more naturally to me. Maybe I mastered this before I was even born. I don't know. I guess, yeah, cyclical time. I'm about that, and like that's what this is about. Moonless. It doesn't even talk about like what month I'm in or what. It's just week 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I can just take note of what I'm processing. There's no sense of like, oh no, it's May and I should have been here right now. Yeah, there's this kind of constant balance between structure and freedom within that. So if we take that to like needing to make money and meet your needs, like I do have a day job, but it doesn't like take over my entire life. Like I have to be boundaried with that, and I'm actually very detached from that work. I don't really care what it looks like, but I want to do a good job for the amount of time that I'm dedicating it, and that gives me the freedom to express what needs to be expressed here. Because if I turn this into a way to make a living, it kind of takes away from this sense of what I want to process. Yeah, I'm doing like a book cover and an album cover, but they're still rooted in what they connect with what I'm going through right now. So it's like, I don't know, I just can't do pet portraits like all day or something like that. But that doesn't mean that's bad for another artist. I think each artist has to find their way and a structure that works for them, that aligns with their own values.
Makes sense. I mean, your art is very fluid. This entire backdrop is just all like very fluid. It has a lot of drip and a lot of, I don't know. It feels very fluid.
Yes, I've heard that, like, people are like, it doesn't look like you're an architect, because some architects actually make art and you can tell it has like a heavy structural hand. Like maybe they taped a line and like wanted it perfectly right angle. I think this is my way of like, I'm not really rebelling against it, but it's like, I have more freedom. Whereas, I don't know, the architecture, it's still a question, like, is this something, I think right now it's good for me, it's working for me right now.
Can you talk about the mothers in your life and how they connect to your artistic practices in the womb, as we brought it up from time to time? And
the womb space, I call it the womb space.
Very yonic imagery, very water-based.
Yeah, so the womb space is what I would call the new moon when it's void, it's dark. Because if you think about it, we were all born out of darkness in our mother's wombs. So I find that as an artist, I like referring to the womb space as this kind of protective, dark shell where I feel safe and I can scream, cry, shout, whatever, and you can hold space for that. If you think of the galaxy, we have the black emptiness for Earth to contain us. And then as a mother, even though I'm not technically a mother, I don't have children right now, but I do have this creative power to birth things into life. not only through visual art, but through words, like what I'm saying, what kind of energy I'm creating. And I think as artists, we are generative beings. We're, there's this idea of like being a consumer and just taking and taking. But I think artists are naturally generative. Like, it's in our nature to create something that never existed there. It's not entirely like original, but it's still a unique expression. So I really value that connection with the womb space. And now this is not to devalue masculine energy because they don't have a womb per se. I think it also elevates these qualities in men. I think men need to be able to express softness, tenderness, unconditional love, and without this pressure of like being the strong one or something like that. And I think that translates into I don't know, I'm not saying that because I love the womb and the woman and all these things that I don't value I don't know, masculine energies. Those are it's just that masculine energies are so obvious. They're right there in your face. Like, we live in a physical realm. Beauty is important. Objects are important. But I think that the womb space, I kind of, when I go into there, I'm like, what does it feel like? What memory does it evoke? It's something that I can't see, but I can feel it. And it's like the realm of metaphor. It's the realm of poetry, of language that transcends actual literal language. When I say blue, it means 5 different things. When I say moon, it means mother, womb space, cycles, elements. But the male gaze is like, it's a moon, it's a solid mass. There's nothing wrong with that. So I also think of paintings as containers to hold what I need to put on the page, or even a book. And that's the structure. I think that is the male energy, the masculine energy is that structure. What is that to contain? I don't know. But arguably, back in the day when they talked about like reproductive organs, humans were all the same. It just happened that in the male bodies it was external, and in the female bodies it was inverted and internal. But it's still the same shape of like this going on with this, right? Yes. It's just inverted. So this whole concept of like gender and all that, I think that's a part of colonization and concept of like limiting these things. Because honestly, like as the womb, like isn't that weird that we bleed and we don't die? That would creep someone out. So I also think like language was created to kind of I don't know, not divide us, but like there's this element of like shame and misogyny that we have to like undo and unlearn these things. But like I think that whether you have like internal or external organs, like it doesn't make you more or less. It's just a different mode of like being in this physical realm. You still have both masculine and feminine and divine energies. And even in older cultures, in Native American cultures, even in Filipino, like the word for person or them is they, but it's still singular. There's no gender attached to that. And in Native cultures, there were gods and goddesses that looked male on the outside but had more feminine energies, and they were valued as having access to the divine. So like I think with using language to genderize things like clothing, it's a way of constricting this way of thinking. I don't know why. It's just this weird construct of like, where does that come from? Like, why can't... Maybe this is also why I like BTS, because like in their latest video, he's wearing a skirt and it's cute. They wear makeup proudly, not all the time, but like I find that them just being themselves is also deconstructing what this concept of masculinity is. And they're very like tender and silly with each other. They cry on stage. Super emotionally vulnerable and open.
I think Western masculinity is threatened by K-pop.
It is, I think it is.
Western masculinity really
I'm
feels
only
threatened.
just now processing this. Like that maybe that's why I'm so into that.
Androgyny.
People are just wearing what they want to wear. Doesn't it make them gay or womanly? And if he is gay, who cares? Let him be gay. Like, but we like to say, oh, that's gay. And there's nothing wrong with being gay, but it's being used in a way that's insulting. And even for me to say that, like, I wore boys' clothes, what does that even mean?
Oh, definitely.
It's just that I'm not wearing dresses. And the pants are baggy, or, but it was bought in the boys section.
I mean, kids apparently can learn to pick up gender cues as early as like 2 or 3. And like, because a lot of queer people will be like, oh, I chose this. Even though I didn't quite understand the significance of what it was until later.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think that. And then people want to intellectualize things. Writing about like there are only 2, and
Oh, yeah.
you know, like. But like, think about it. We both came from like a man and a woman. I mean, I don't know if I'm offending anyone when I say these things, but this
Who
is
would you
just,
be offended?
well, I don't know, people that are like, you can only be a man or a woman or
Oh,
God,
Oh,
blah,
who
blah,
cares
blah.
about
Why do you think about God? Like, God doesn't have a gender. You know,
Okay.
if we are from God, don't you think we have this kind of thing that cannot be named? You know, sometimes language pisses me off. Like, even when I read an article, I can tell that this is the narrative that this person wanted to create for the left or the right or the whoever, and it's not true. I don't know why I can immediately, like, see through that. And it's hard to explain, but, like...
Language is never neutral. Never.
We're never neutral.
Never.
Yeah, we're never neutral. You can't just be.
Objectivity is a facade.
Yeah, why can't it just be? Like, why can't men wear dresses and be men? And be proud, manly men in dresses?
Yeah.
What's the whole concept of that? Like, it's weird to me. It's very strange.
And I guess to bring us back from the constellation to the Earth a little bit, and then
Reality.
this
With a
dimension.
Capricorn.
Reality is not objective.
Yeah. So in this dimension, can we talk a little bit about how like Massachusetts and from your earlier generation, your parents were in the Philippines, and then coming to Houston, and how like it connects to Rice, how you arrived at Rice, like that trajectory.
What was the beginning of it? Messages?
The kind of your footprints, starting from, it's like a narrative for the audience to learn about how you arrived in Houston and Rice.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. I think my father was trying to start businesses in different states. My mom even gave birth to me without him by her side. He was like trying to do something. He was working odd jobs at restaurants, tried being a realtor. Also, a business in New Jersey, like a buying business where you take goods from America and ship them back to the Philippines. That was like a common thing that we would do. And we ended up in Houston because his ex-wife, so like my kind of a but they weren't together at the time, was living in Houston with one of my half-sisters. It's just a family that's like all over the place, and I think the way I see it is like we're all trying to make it, whether this relationship is romantically good or not, but like there's this sense of, if that's not working, why don't you come here and we'll try this and we'll try that. I call that like kind of the spaghetti method, like seeing what sticks. But my mom was a nurse, trained as a nurse, and it was at the time when the government was having a shortage of nurses. And when I think about it at the time, it's like, if you really zoom out of the whole influence of America on the Philippines, it's almost like they created a place to have a military base, right? To have, power and all that with the location, but also infiltrating like even Western school system and the concept of like learning English. So like a lot of Filipinos know English during martial law, was it? Or I'm not like a real like great historian, but there's a reason why Filipinos know English, and I almost think that these American values and certain things were almost like grooming these people to, in some way or another, to kind of be exploited. I don't know if that's like too harsh of a statement, but like it created this wave of people having to give up the dream of what they wanted to do and become a nurse to make more income in the States. So not only are they kind of like exploiting the land, but also the people in a way. And that there's a reason why laws change over time depending on the needs of the American government. Like, I don't know if they foresaw a need for nurses or something like that, or what is the meaning behind all that things. But my mom's job was very stable. It was my father that kind of had us moving because he really wanted to provide and do more for the family in that sense. But while he was doing that, he was taking me to school, going to my parent-teacher meetings. So like he was kind of like more maternal figure in my life. So when I talk about the divine feminine, like I'm thinking of my dad too, who identifies as a male, because he was so tender and saved these scraps of paper, and like you might be like Jose Rizal and be in a museum, like like how he like really overvalued me in some kind of sense. I think I'm really lucky for that though too, because I know a lot of artists struggle with like self-worth and their parents not being supportive of what they're making. And
you just said he overvalued you, so
yeah, what's the meaning of this? Yeah, I think of him fondly as this kind of like cheerleader. So yeah, they started a business in Houston because my dad was like, this is not working out in Massachusetts, let's go here and let's petition my full sister who was left in the Philippines, and then I met her in Houston. So they settled in Sugar Land, I think first somewhere in North Houston through a mutual friend. My parents started a business, physical therapy. It's right off Highway 59 somewhere. So my dad was kind of, the way to make it in business is find a partner and know what they're good at doing and then market that. So like with my mom, she's a nurse, so eventually let's do a physical therapy clinic, and that started blossoming. And Houston started to get saturated with that kind of work, so he had a doctor connection in Memphis and started opening up clinics there. And as I was going to school at Dulles and Clements, I applied to Rice University because I actually grew up listening to K-True, and it's like a weird radio station, student run, and I was just like, these people are like, they crack me up, like I want to be a DJ there secretly. But also I would drive by the campus and see that the architecture building would be like lights on all the time, and I'm like, what are they doing in there? Like, what is that? I could see myself in there. And my art teacher played a Maya Lin documentary on the Vietnam War Memorial and how she won that competition unanimously with one watercolor. And I had never lost anyone in my life, but when I saw that, I was just like, I got this download of like, oh my gosh, creating space for humanity to grieve an unpopular war that no one wanted to take part in, and then her being of Asian American descent being discriminated against, this monolithic symbol of a war that's not glorifying one hero on a horse. Like, it was like, I liked the element of dealing with grief and then holding space for the collective. Also, the hand, it's just a simple concept but very strong, kind of resonate with that. And the thoughtfulness of the element of time of when each person died, like that blew my mind, and I was like, this is like art, like meta art, next level meaning of life kind of thing. So like, I was like, okay, K2 DJ, architecture students never sleeping like me, myelin, and my parents are in Memphis, so being in Houston would be convenient to check on the house and stuff like that. It was just like, everything was kind of aligning to apply to RISE and see if I can get into the architecture program. And I noticed that the application was the only one that said, fill in this box with something that appeals to you. I'm like, that's so wild. Like, I'm in for this. And that was my top choice. So I applied, like, early decision and got in. But I also did apply to RISD. It's an art school. My dad wanted me to be a lawyer. I don't know why, but I applied to Rhodes, got in, but it was like, it feels haunted in here. I get weird vibes. I just applied to all these different things, but RISE was my first choice, so I ended up there. And it was funny because when my parents had left me to do their business, I went on campus. I was like, wow, free food. Like, I don't have to worry about like where I'm gonna get food or like the next thing. Because those are little things I had to worry about when they weren't around in high school. My full sister basically raised me and took on this like adult role at a young age. RISE, yeah, so that's how I ended up at RISE, and it's kind of gone full circle with Portal of Healing because that concept of holding space for the collective grief during an unpopular or civil unrest, I guess, it's still going on right now. It's like these themes are in your mind and they kind of circle. That's like why time is this cyclical thing. It's like when I met Anne, we were talking about these exhibitions and faces in the pandemic, and I just talked about this natural progression about healing and what would that look like, and it kind of just happened organically, and yeah, it's just a coincidence that I went to RISE and it's at RISE and it's in a portal with this portal shape. And I'm still here, I guess. I'm still connected. So that's kind of cool. As artist instead of architect, I guess. Yeah.
We're so honored to close that loop with you and the Port of Healing and you starting at RISE. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you started being a creative and what were your earlier works like?
Being a creative, so growing up around adults, I think I naturally created my own world or bubble. So that's like why I would write like stories and poems. I still have them here. And I would talk about themes like war and sustainability at like a young age. It's like, where did I get these like ideas? And I don't know if it has to do with growing up around adults. Like maybe I feel things so intensely because it's just like I'm in my own bubble making things. And I was also drawn to playing piano and feeling music, and then dance is also an expression where your body is the conduit of. So like when I listen to a piece, if there's a trill, like I naturally like do these. Like even at a concert, someone will be like, "You're like magical." I don't know how you're feeling the music, but I think it's just something that comes naturally to me. It's funny. There's this kind of stereotype about Filipinos. You're not Filipino if you can't sing, dance, or play an instrument.
I think it's a stereotype, yeah.
Yeah, because there's like a lot of like singing game shows or like, you know, when you go to a party, we always bring the karaoke machine. So like my family is very loud, very gregarious. We're not restrained at all. And so I think that was also kind of like a nourishing ground or nourishing ground for creative expression. So like one Christmas, like my cousins and my aunt danced to BTS Mic Drop, and then after that, my one cousin read a Pablo Neruda poem.
Oh, yes.
And it's like, I like it when you're quiet. Everyone's like loud, like, what? It's, I like it when you're quiet, be quiet. And, you know, like, I just find it's very quirky, like, and we're not all artists, but, like, we just love doing this kind of weird talent show thing. And not even a talent show, it's just like, this is what I'm doing for the night, and oh, I know. My great-grandma married a saxophonist, and he was a fisherman, and she sold a piece of land for a grocery store and would rent the top story to fishermen that need a place to board. I think that's how she met my great-grandpa, but like, I get the sense that they just like woke up and lived their life. So when I read about my great-grandma Lola Shawn, like I was like, oh, this is where I get it from. She had wild hair and was ambidextrous like me, and just loved, like, she played piano and then also painted landscapes when she was losing her eyesight. And she had like a loony sense of humor and would like bake cookies in the shape of penises just for fun. And when my dad met her, she was already losing her eyesight, and she goes, it's good to meet you. I know I can't see you, but I'm imagining you naked. And it just like caught him off guard, and he was like laughing. And like just when I hear about her, I'm like, I feel like this is like where I come from. This makes sense. Not this whole like, do what you need to do to survive and make money. I think I'm blessed to have been born in this generation where I kind of have more freedom to like experiment with something that's not solely based on surviving in another country like my mom did. And what am I talking about now? Creativity.
Yes.
So yeah, that's like in my blood. We love to sing, we love to dance, we're loud with how we're feeling. And sometimes families where they're like, you know, holding in things and they're just like eating politely, I just feel like I'm on eggshells. Like that's just not what I grew up around. So creativity, I also would play piano, and I was also in theater. I did like lip syncing. That's not even like a serious thing. I would go to like lip sync competitions and like lip sync to Mulan or TLC. Really great group in the 90s. And I think that has to do with like liking karaoke and like just having fun and not taking things too seriously. That's something that's part of being creative, I think. Because once you take it too seriously, it's like, it becomes this, I don't know, like a job in a bad way. The word job is weird too. Like, didn't that guy like suffer a lot in the Bible? It's like, where does that come from? But yeah, like creativity is not something I can like turn on or off, or like there's this formative moment when I'm creative. Like I've always had this sense of I'm feeling it, so let's do it, you know, kind of a thing. Also, growing up when my parents were focusing on their business, so they don't have attention to tell me, Rachel, stop doing that, or you need to. There was kind of lack of discipline. So I think that also nourished my creativity, because it's like I don't have rules. Like it's amazing that I turned out this way, but I know it could have gone really bad. But maybe that's why I thrive in a capitalistic kind of structure where I can create my own time and I don't have to answer to someone at like 9 a.m. every day. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but like, yeah, I think we're also all creative people. Like, just being able to ask better questions and say something. Like, everyone's a contribution. We're humans. Like, you know, we're creating things, whether we're aware of them or not. You know, even the way you enter a room, it shifts a certain vibe, and I'm very like present to that kind of a thing. But I think with the art and the thing and all of this stuff, that comes from realizing you can take that as an elective and like enter vase competitions in high school. I think that's where you get awards for these things. I'm like, oh cool, I don't even have to like, this is fun. I don't know. And when my art teacher showed me the Maya Lin documentary, that was like, oh, let's do architecture, because architecture is kind of like, it becomes space that you can feel in. It's like walking into the canvas, or like walking into the concept like blew my mind. Like it's just another dimension of this kind of visual thing that you formed. And I did thrive more during my first year in architecture school because it's very more abstract. I struggled more in the later years where you had to be more technical and like, where's the air conditioning? You know, it's like, I'm like, how can the air conditioning unit define space and create a soft boundary between what it feels like to, you know, like I'm just like, I thrive in this whole like space in terms of like boundaries that are not seen but felt. So like, I think that's another way that even though I studied architecture, my way of seeing is still rooted in like the formless experience of walking through a space or being in a space. And I think that's what bothered me a lot, is like, I'm in school, I'm supposed to be designing for the human experience, but I'm in front of a computer like all the time. That kind of really like ate at me for a while, like, and it kind of got frustrating when I was just like, I just want to see pink paint and put it on there and have it be there. You need this kind of like immediate gratification of something, but like with architecture, it's like, sometimes it's not even your idea, and then we don't know if we're going to get the funding to even build the thing and then make it happen in the physical realm. And then we have this intention, but when humans actually go into that space, sometimes designers are not thinking of, like, can they even open their, or you have to turn the light on to go into the bathroom, and it's not, because like when I plan things, I really can just see what it's like to flow in there. I get it immediately. Like interior spaces, I don't have to even overthink these things. It just come naturally to me. But yeah, I would say architecture informs my visual art practice, and my visual art practice still informs my architecture, and even just like how we deal with existing, like how do we hold space, how do we create safer spaces, how do we I just think that creativity is gonna be with me till the end of time. I think that's, yeah. It's never ending, like, you know, like I'm a painter, but like, look, I have like clay behind me, and like, I'm never just like comfortable with one way of doing something, I guess. So
Yeah, can you talk about like what comes into your visual art practices? For example, there's like romance and like other abstractions and figurations that's both very prevalent. Yeah, and what fuels your creative energy?
yeah, so like I create in real time of when I'm feeling something, and sometimes I could be celebrating the beauty of nature and I put earth tones on a canvas, and then I can't sleep for a while and I'm like, what's happening? And it's like the whole forests are burning to make room for, I don't know, resources and exploitation of things. And then I'll just add like black onto it. And so it's like the painting is never really done. It just evolves in the moment that I connect to it. So sometimes it's very straightforward like this. Like I wanted to go to Italy and travel by myself. Someone recommended the city and I painted it before I went there. Or I'll get into a wormhole of Octavia Butler and I'll paint her face. Or it'll be a breakup and I need a space to really grieve that relationship, and I'll have the words. So it is like a visual journal. I'll have words that point to the experience, but I obscure the word in a way because it's not really meant for everyone to know. It was just like for me kind of a thing. And so a lot of it's rooted in my own personal celebrations and relationships and joy and grief, and then sometimes it's more rooted in humanity and like the planet and social justice and how do I become a mirror to society to hold up something that they don't have the time to stop and process, to think about, because they're busy doing their 9-to-5 thing or taking care of the babies or whatever they have to do. I feel like as artists, like I have to be present, and I'm meant to process things in this time or however long it takes for me to do it, to kind of frame this moment. And it's like, remember, this was effed up, like let's not go there again, or it's still a problem and it always has been, like what are we going to do about it? It's here for now, and you can go back to it when you have the space and time to process that or whatever it is.
Space is very interesting to me because like you paint over your words a lot, and it's like it is sort of like I'm walking into a journal, but I can't really decipher what it means, and I'm not supposed to. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You talked about your journaling in another interview we did, and then also oral history and the practices that you were able to combine during your Porter healing.
Right.
work.
And the reason why I had the words legible in Portal of Healing is because these are other people's words, and they're consensually letting Houston Asian American Archives use that in an art piece, so I wanted to celebrate that. And I made a connection with a friend that I had lost. Her name is Vivian, and I wrote one quote that stuck with me, and it was, "Live awake, I want to live mischievously, shamelessly, and infectiously awake," because I had gotten the download at that moment, and she was a Rice student in architecture, Chinese American, and it was just like, so some of the things are planned and some of them aren't, and it's just like, that's another example of how the piece kind of just evolves when I get like a download of something that feel like this needs to be on there. And yeah, so it's like I'm a conduit for whatever needs to be expressed, and of course it's through my own filter, or like I guess, but with Portal of Healing, I guess it's more of like a collective visual journal of some sort. And then it even expanded into dance with Ria's number of pairing body language with the word, and I'm still exploring that too. With the Texas Biennale, with Philippine X Artists of Houston has been granted some space, but it's still in discussion. But I think that's another form of creative expression, like collaborating with a dancer and mirroring body language to express empathy and what it feels like in the body to see another and mirror that back. I'm inspired by the connections I have with people, current events, earth shit, my own feelings in my journal, what I'm trying to process, if it's a breakup or if it's like, yeah, I'm feeling myself, or if it's like, leave me alone, or I just love this song and it makes me feel this way. Because like the canvas can hold everything, that's the beautiful thing about it. And it's like everything inspires me. I don't know, there's no limit. I was like driving back from the desert and I still had like cactus needles in me, and it was raining, but I saw that like the way the sun was setting was casting this orange sheen on the road, and the blue sky was reflecting on the water. So like through the windshield wiper I could see this like cool complementary like I just noticed like really very little simple beautiful things wreck me. Sometimes it's a really obvious thing, like the world's crumbling down, like what is happening, what humanity, like how did we get here, or decolonize your mind, like words are or like, you know, people over profits, people over, and that's the thing about artists, it's like they're not really valued in the sense of capitalistic, like we actually have to create our own value, and we have to like believe in that what we're doing is meaningful, and it's kind of like it's weird. It's like my relationship with money has changed over time. It really is currency. It's an exchange of energy and time, and how much are you willing to do this thing and put like a number to it. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, but it's like art is, I don't know, it's wild. I think it goes against this status quo of like, when someone's like, how long did it take? Because they're thinking about like billable hours, but it's like, I don't know, it took like my parents meeting me and having me and me going through this experience and being able to make this connection at this moment of time to make this thing. You know? Weird.
Those aren't billable hours.
It can't be measured. So like when someone asks me like, how much is it for that? I think in terms of reality, earth things, like, okay, how much is the material? How much is the space that I'm paying for to make the thing happen? What's the deadline? What's the budget? But then also, how much of my energy am I willing to do in exchange for this amount? And it's kind of like evolving over time when I think about these things. But also I have like more experience now under my belt of like doing things that people have paid for, like in buildings and stuff, which adds to your like credibility, I guess. But money's weird. It's really energy if you think about it. Why am I talking about money?
And next, can you talk a little bit about your experiences with the Houston art scene?
Art scene?
Yes. Like, you talked about the Philippine artists of Houston.
Okay, let's see. The art scene.
And, who are your communities of artists?
I used to be part of this church called Canvas. And it was rooted in this concept of like God as a creator, and I actually would paint during the service. And it's no longer a church anymore. It was a plant, but it fell apart because there just wasn't enough members. But I started like a women's art workshop as like a ministry from that. So that was like my first venture in leading some kind of let's engage community in an artistic way. And these were women that were leaving violent situations or homeless, and they needed to learn people skills. So they were at the Women's Home, which is a for-profit organization, which is actually great because they can make money through the thrift shop, and that gets reinvested into teaching them computer skills or running a register. So like their schedule was very intense, and I started volunteering at that thrift shop and was like, they're like, this is winter wear, this is medium large. I was like, I don't know, I can't do this. Can I just teach them art or something? Like, can they like just chill with me and we paint nails, or I teach them how to make a pot of thing, or we knit a thing. Like, let's just be, this is like too much. So with the Women's Home, I really got to connect with my local community. They lived down the street from me in Montrose, and just hearing their stories and holding space for that. And then I started questioning like my day job at a very corporate firm, because I felt like I was lacking that kind of connection, having a staring contest with my computer all day. And I was like, what's another way that I can do these things? So then I started doing art and yoga workshops with one of my neighbors. Her name's Nicole Peralta, and she had a vision of teaching art after a yoga practice. So then I got involved in like a whole yoga mind-body connection community. And then we would also have art dates. So a few times a month we would just create and meet at coffee shops and do that. And then I realized one of my architecture friends from a different firm wanted to learn portraits, so we took classes at the Art League, and there's a lot of great teachers there that I've learned from, and students, without like the whole structure of being at a university and stuff. It was more, nothing's for a grade, so there was a freedom in connecting with my classmates and teachers there. And then I learned about Artist Inc., which is a business-oriented, like trying to help artists how to run and monetize on their creativity. And it's through Fresh Arts, a nonprofit organization. I applied to that, and I was like, yeah, no one teaches us about like these things like taxes and money and how to market, whatever. And I met a lot of people through that. Anthony Paviano is one of them, and so we actually presented at City Hall about our art practice, and that was like nerve-wracking, but really cool for me to do. And I'm still in touch with them when they have events. They have one coming up, and I think Royal Sumikat is part of the panel. Carla Sue, like a lot of people that I met through there. And it's really great because it's not really about learning XYZ, but like being plugged into this community, so that any time you have a question in your practice, you would at least know where to go to point you to the right person, because we also had speakers come from there. And then with Filipinx Artists of Houston, with Matt Manalo, he started an email list of all Filipino creatives in the area. And when we met, it was just like a Filipino party. Like, it was great. And, we get a similar sense of humor of things. And I think a lot of the theme of decolonization and reclaiming our story and listening to our ancestors, that's a very strong theme that I don't get from, let's say, Artist Inc. or the Women's Home, because it's a different kind of, thing. And I think that's also how I got into the Houston Asian American Archives because it's about reclaiming the oral tradition, owning your story, and sharing your story as you want it being told, and not letting the media like create the narrative for you. I'm so sick of that. Like, whenever I read, whether it's geared towards the left or the right, I'm like, this is all not true. Like, I don't know why, it just bothers me that when we do find the platform to be heard, it gets misconstrued in a weird way that brings us back to these like limited ways of siloing off people and their ideals and values. So Filipinx Arts of Houston, really great because it's a place where we can talk about these things and not have to translate it. When I say decolonize your mind, like not everyone would know what I'm talking about, right? I don't know. It's not something you hear in like normal conversation at an art group. And I learned from them a lot, so that's really cool. And I've connected with some people that are also about the moon and the stars and the planets. So it's like I don't need to translate that either. So I also have a group that is about the moon and the stars, and we meet every new moon, full moon, with intentions. And it's 3 of my really good friends I've known. And there's also, let me see, there's that moon group. BTS Army is another collective that I'm plugged into, and they're actually into like numerology and the meaning behind these numbers and that. And then there's also like social activist groups that are all about how do we use our privilege in when people are being oppressed, or how can we help when immigrants are being deported. So like I was part of this like weird secret, I don't know if I should say this, but I was like, there's this group called Surge, and they had like, in terms of crises, are you going to be available when these things happen? I don't think I'm like super active with them right now, but it's like, yeah, I'm part of a lot of different communities. Not so much the architecture one anymore. I used to be, it's just not me anymore, but that's okay. And the art community in terms of like the studios, so Hardy and Nance has a whole other community, and Holy Family is a church that does an artist collective, and I was part of that too, and sometimes I do creativity and spirituality exercises with them. That's how I met the author of this poetry book, Sarah Triana, that I'm illustrating. So yeah, they all kind of like overlap into this thing, and it's really great too, because it's like I get different energies, and I can have different conversations with these people, and some of them are in more than one of them. So I think it's really culturally rich and ideologically too, I guess, because, you know, worldviews are always changing. It's good to not only be with people that think one way. Yeah, that's community for me.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I guess as we are approaching the end of the interview, would you be willing to share or leave a time capsule with us for the future mankind?
How big is that? Is it really a thing? Or
no,
digital?
just like a kind of a conceptual time capsule.
Oh, we can talk about it, yeah.
Yeah, like if you're interested to just like leave in front of the camera as a way to kind of share with the kind of a post-apocalyptic, like when the aliens discovers it, and would you like to tell them about?
Oh, is this a question that I can say right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I believe that we are all a contribution. We all have gifts, And it's your duty to really live into that creative expression, whatever that is. You know, even if you're an accountant, like how are you using the numbers to like defy the status quo and this, you know, are you decolonizing the calendar? What are you doing? It doesn't need to be this like artistic woo-woo thing, but whatever your gift is, I believe that we're all healers, we all have different gifts, and we're all a contribution. And whatever you feel called to do, it may not be healed or completely solved within your lifetime, but the fact that you're here and that there's only one of you, that's already testament enough to know that you can plant those seeds for you know, future lifetimes beyond your existence here, is what I would say. And you know, whatever you believe in, I don't really care, but it's more about how do you show up. How do you show up to others? Does that make you like a more loving person or less loving person? Those are certain things that I kind of return and ask myself, because people can believe the same thing, but one may not show up as loving as the other. So I think that's more important. You know, we try to over-intellectualize things, but like, how are you really showing up with your heart, and what are you giving your energy to, I guess, in what way? Because I think we all have gifts, and I believe that we don't have control of the cards that we're dealt with, but there is always a choice that we can make, and there's power in being able to choose certain things. Like it's not all mind control. We have human agency. So plant seeds, and yes, be rooted in love and peace.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah. And also, like, just love Earth Mother no matter what, because even if we fail at everything, she will
Bounce back.
Yeah, she will always. She's more resilient than any of us.
She's gonna outlive our species.
She's going to, yeah. As much as I freak out about her, I know she's like beyond us.
Yes. We're not beyond her.
We're not beyond her, yeah. We are visitors.
Yes.
Just like the aliens.
Yeah.